Recently, when we were in the mountains of East Tennessee, we took a motorcycle ride with our friends down to Lynchburg, Tennessee, and we took a tour of the Jack Daniel's Distillery. So after the intro, we'll take you on the tour with us. We are Rickey and Denise. We sold everything in 2020 and hit the road to RV full time. We travel in our Freightliner M2 truck, pulling our DRV JX 450 full house that hauls our 2020 Harley Tri-Glide. We invite you to travel along with us as we are soaring together. We rode into the small town of Lynchburg, Tennessee, and decided to grab a bite to eat at the Barbecue Caboose Cafe before heading on over to the distillery.
First question I ask is, you do want to take a tour, correct? About an hour to an hour and a half?
Well, we had an awesome tour guide, and in just a few minutes we're going to begin our tour, and he gave us some awesome history about Jack Daniel's. Jack, at a very young age, lost his mother, and he was, I think, the youngest of like a family of 10 children. And anyway, his father remarried, and Jack didn't get along with his new stepmother. So he went to live with the local minister and his family, Reverend Call. And Jack soon found out that Reverend Call was making whiskey, and Jack really got into that. So over the years, they did introduce it to Jack and let him start helping in the stills. But Reverend Call, according to what I read on the website, Reverend Call was given the ultimatum by the church to either quit making the whiskey or he was to resign the church. The tour guide is going to give you all the information, and he's going to let you know exactly what Reverend Call decided to do. So we hope you enjoy the tour, and maybe one day you can go and have your own personal tour at the Jack Daniel's Distillery.
A little bit over 1 million gallons of whiskey in that barrel house.
Oh, wow.
So, looking at the barrel house, think of your own homes. Top of the barrel house is going to be just like your attic. It's really hot in the summer, really cold in the winter. Middle of the barrel house is going to be just like your main floor of your home. The bottom of the barrel house will be more like your basements. Now, in the summertime, the top of these barrel houses are going to get to temperatures of 120 to 125 degrees. It's going to allow the whiskey to go deeper and longer into the barrel. It's going to pull more color, more flavor right from the barrel. So our 3 single barrels, single barrel select, single barrel rye, single barrel crude, are going to come from the very top 2 tiers of the barrel house. 1 out of every 300 barrels will make the cut to be a single barrel whiskey. Looking at that barrel house, we go to make old number 7, we're going to take 170 to 200 barrels from every level of that 7-story barrel house. We're gonna mingle that back together, one barrel at a time. That way we get that one consistent color and taste. That way, no matter where you're at in the world, it's always gonna remind you of home here in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Now, where's my Gentleman Jack drinker? I normally have one on every tour. Oh, you guys like a little bit higher proof whiskey, huh? Good, good. Now, the only difference between Gentleman Jack and Old Number 7 is gonna be an additional 3 foot of charcoal. Once we mingle the whiskey back together, we're gonna take it back down to charcoal mellowing. We're gonna mellow it a second time. This time we're gonna push it through 3 foot of charcoal instead of letting it drop 1 drop at a time. That way, when it's done, it's gonna be the smoothest whiskey in the world, okay? Only difference between Old Number 7 and Gentleman Jack right there. We came out with Gentleman Jack, it's around 1987. A lot of people are drinking clear spirits. So to entice people to come back to the brown spirits, the good side of the house, we started mellowing some whiskey a little bit more. That makes it a little bit smoother to drink, makes it more palatable to a larger group of people, okay? Now come with me, we're gonna go down to the Rickyard. Rickyard's where we make all of our charcoal. Now we're gonna use hard sugar maple to make our charcoal. Same sugar maple that they use up north to make maple syrup. Now I like maple syrup, but I love Jack, so I think we put it to better use down here. So, sugar maple that we use is gonna be culls from the furniture industry, pieces of wood that they couldn't use for furniture. Now, we have 2 sawmills that are gonna supply it to us. When they deliver it, it's gonna be in a stack of what we call a rick. A rick is just a measurement of wood, folks. Don't get real wrapped up over it. Now, we'll leave those ricks in our Rickyard for another 6 months to finish drying out. The drier that wood is, the better the charcoal is gonna be. So you gonna put this on YouTube?
I will.
Yes, absolutely. There you go.
You're not joking.
No, I'm not joking. not at all.
All right, folks. Now, come with me. Now, Darren and Tracy have been making all the charcoal here for around 17, 18 years. These guys got this down to a science. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna take 4 ricks of wood. We got 2 ricks in each stack here. They're gonna put it underneath one of them EPA approved hoods. Now, what do you think we're gonna use for an accelerant to get that fire going? 140 proof right off the still. We used any kind of petroleum product, that taste is going to transfer to your whiskey as it's going through the charcoal. Now once that fire gets going, it's going to get the temperatures 1500 degrees. It's going to burn for right around 2 hours. Now here's the hardest part. Darren and Tracy know when to turn the hose pipe on, start watering it down. They turn that hose pipe on too early, they're going to have a large stack of unburnt sugar maple. They turn it on too late, they're gonna have nothing but ash in their stainless steel bins. So, if you ever wanna try to catch a live burn here at Jack, you wanna be here on a Monday morning. Be one of the first tours out of the day. That's your best chance of catching a live burn here, okay? Now, when they first get done making charcoal, it's gonna be too large for us to use. So they're gonna take it to that building next door. They're gonna run it through a grinder. They're gonna grind that charcoal down to pea size. They're gonna hand pack 10 foot of that pea-sized charcoal into each of our mellowing vats. Charcoal is gonna last anywhere from 8 to 12 months. Tasters are gonna tell them when it's time to change it out. Every day they'll pull samples of whiskey from the bottom of the vats. Tasters are gonna come in and do a blind tasting. When that whiskey starts getting a grainy taste from the fatty acids and corn oils, it's when it's time to change out the charcoal. So Darren and Tracy are going to go in, remove the charcoal from the vats. They're going to send that used charcoal to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. That's where they're going to compress it into your grilling briquettes. So when you see Jack Daniel's charcoal in your Home Depot or Lowe's, that ain't just charcoal with our name on it, folks. That's charcoal that was used to make whiskey with. You don't need any lighter fluid to get it going. All you got to do is drop a lit match on it. Take it right off on its own. Now, believe it or not, this is called the Lincoln County process. Back in Jack's day, Moore County didn't exist. We didn't come along until after the Civil War. We were part of Lincoln County. About 7 gentlemen all making whiskey in these parts. Everybody ran their whiskey through sugar maple charcoal. Wasn't anything that Jack thought of, it's just how we made whiskey here in this region of the country. Okay? Here at Jack, we got our own fire brigade. It's made up of 35 employees here at Jack. Now, we've never needed the fire brigade here. We've never had a fire. Now, if we ever do, these guys are going to operate just like a volunteer fire department. They're going to come in from still house, bottling, warehousing, and maintenance. They train every Monday afternoon. They're all certified firefighters. Now, we keep our fire trucks down in bottling, another 1.5 miles down the road. That way they're essentially located amongst all 92 of our barrel houses. This truck here is a 1919 LaFrance. That truck ran, it was crank started and chain driven. That was our first fire truck. Now folks, Jack wasn't actually born here in Lynchburg. He was actually born about 5 miles from here. He was the last born of 10 children. Now, his mother passed away about 3 years after he was born. Now 10 kids running around, it didn't take long for Jack's dad to remarry. When he remarried, Jack and his stepmother didn't get along real well. So at a very young age, Jack decided he was a full-grown man going to move out on his own. He eventually landed on Dan Call's farm. Now, Dan Call was a local Lutheran minister. He had a dry goods store. He also had a whiskey still. Now, with Jack being such a young boy, it didn't take him long to find that still. Once he found the still, he was all over Dan and a gentleman named Nathan Nearest Green. You got to remember, this was back before the Civil War and Emancipation. Dan had an enslaved man by the name of Nathan Nearest Green. His job on that farm was to oversee Dan's whiskey still. So, he finally wore those two gentlemen down. Dan turned to Nathan and said, go ahead and teach Jack how to make whiskey. That became Jack's lifelong passion. So now you got the three of them making whiskey there on the farm. Things are moving along really good for him. But you gotta remember though, Dan's still a minister. Getting harder and harder to preach about the spirits on Sunday when you're making the spirits all week long. So he decides it's best to get out of the whiskey business. Jack ends up with the still. So now you got Nathan and Jack making whiskey on Dan's farm, but now he's got to lease the land and buy the water. That's cutting into his profit after a few years. Heard there was a cave spring here in Lynchburg. Came down here, found our cave spring, took one sip of the water, realized it's perfect water for making whiskey. Packed up his operation at Dan's and brought it all down here. Folks, all the water for Jack since 1881 has come out of this cave spring. All said and done, we're making the organic health drink. Cave spring water, corn, barley malt, rye. Folks, we are GMO free in case you're worried about it. This cave goes back in about 1/4 mile. Finally narrows down where you can't get in any further. The water in this cave runs 56 degrees year round. Come July and August, this is going to be the best place to be in Moore County, natural and air conditioning. Now when Jack was alive, this still set right here, pulled the water directly from the cave. Today we pump the water from the other side of that dam. We're going to pump it into reserve tanks on top of the hill. We'll operate the distillery from those reserve tanks. That way we're rotating the water to keep it fresh. We always got water on reserve. Now, who here can tell me where old number 7 comes from? Nobody knows.
Come on, Rick.
When Jack died, he took that to his grave. He never bothered to tell anybody where he came up with old number 7. Now, over the years, I've heard a lot of different stories. Been coming down here and working here for going on 5 years. Been coming here for 16. Now, I've heard everything from he was 7 years old when he left home. I heard that it took him 7 different grain mills before he fine-tuned his recipe. Even heard it was a number 7 train that took him to St. Louis where they won the gold medal. But there's one story I'm trying to stop. First time I came here, my tour guide tried telling me that Jack had 7 girlfriends. Now, I believe that Jack had 7 girlfriends. He's the most eligible bachelor in Tennessee. What I don't agree with is that he referred to his favorite girlfriend as old number 7. Folks, if I ever referred to any of my girlfriends as old, when I come out of the coma, I better have the next one waiting in the wing. We hired a local artist to build us this bronze. He brought the statue out. We realized right away somebody made a serious mistake. Folks, I'm 6'1". Jack only stood 5'2". The statue should have only been that tall. Jack wore a size 4 men's shoe. These are close to a size 7. Ask the artist, what were you possibly thinking of? Jack was larger than life, so I made him larger than life. Pretty good answer. I can live with it. This is a special spot in Moore County. It's the one and only place you can get yourself a free shot. Jack on the rocks. I'll be here all next week too, folks. Now folks, just so you have an understanding of how much whiskey y'all are drinking, these grain silos up here, they were put in the late 50s. They were put in, it held enough grain for us to make whiskey for right around 30 days. Today it doesn't hold enough grain for us to make whiskey for 24 hours. So every day we're going to stage grain trucks a quarter-mile up the road. At 5 o'clock we'll open up the gate. We're going to take 35 grain trucks of corn every night to make your all's whiskey. Y'all drinking some whiskey. Yeah, I got a good gig going. Keep it up. Now, my friends from Australia, you guys are the #3 importer of old number 7 right there.
Yeah.
Goes to UK, or no, #2. UK, Australia, then Germany. If California was its own country, they would be the 3rd largest importer of Jack Daniels. Sometimes I think they are.
How many trucks did you say?
35.
35, wow. He said 13, I said wow.
The equivalent of 95 acres of corn.
Yeah.
We're making just a little bit of whiskey.
Yeah.
All of our grain is contracted grain. It's going to come as far north as Montana, as far south as Alabama. We're going to get our rye from Montana, our barley is going to come from the Dakotas. The corn's going to come from Alabama all the way up through the region to Indiana and Ohio. So, #1 grade A yellow corn. All right, folks, we're going to go in here to the back of Jack's office. Now folks, this is the oldest building we have on the campus. This is Jack's original office. Now this was worldwide headquarters for Jack until 1956. That's when we moved to that brick building next door. These are photos of all of our master distillers throughout the years, but we're actually missing a photo that should be right here. Nathan nearest green. When Jack got the still from Dan, he hired Nathan to be his first head distiller, what we refer to as a master distiller today. Now we don't have a picture of Nathan. We've even asked members of the Green family. Nobody has that photo. Now when Jack came down here from Dan's farm, he asked Nathan to come with him. Nathan was getting up in years at that point. He chose to stay at Dan Call's. But his son George came down here and continued to make whiskey with Jack. Now this photo here was made right around 1900. I don't care where you were at that time. Chance of George Green in a photo sitting beside the owner of a company be really hard to find. Tells me a lot about George and Jack's friendship. They were about the same age. They'd grown up side by side making whiskey. Now one thing I like to point out in this photo that a lot of people overlook, only one man standing in it. Mr. Jack. Everybody else is sitting down. So you get a true idea how tall he really is.
Oh wow.
Now, Chris Fletcher, he's our master distiller today. He was the assistant distiller when Jeff was here. Chris is one of the most humble men you'll ever meet in your life. Now, when Jeff left, we all had our fingers crossed that Chris was going to be our new master distiller. We were really hoping for him to be it. Reason is, we all feel that Chris has got whiskey flowing through his veins. His grandfather, Mr. Bobo right here. Folks, I am the oddity at Jack Daniels. We're a generational company. I'm a first generation Yankee employee. I wear the title pretty proud. Most of the people I work with are going to be 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, even 6th generation employees. Those folks in the still house learn to make whiskey before they graduate from high school. That's going to give us our best quality control for making our whiskey right there. Now we're going to wrap up our history lesson in that front office. You can either go through the side door or follow me around this way. Jack was a really giving person. He gave to war orphans, widows. Your barn burned down, he might give you money to rebuild your barn. At one point, Lem told Jack that if you keep giving your money away, not going to have enough money to bury you, Jack. That's the kind of guy he really was. Come all the way in, folks. We're going to be pointing to pictures around here. Now I want to introduce everybody, the man that brought us together today. His picture's hanging above the mantle. That is Jasper Newton Daniel. Picked up the name Jack when he was a young kid. Pretty glad that he did, because you know when I go to the bar, last drink I'd ever want to order would be a Jasper and Coke. Man above the roll top desk is Mr. Lem Motlow, Jack's favorite nephew. Now Lem come to work for Jack when he was around 17 years old. Jack never married, never had children of his own, so when he died, he left his distillery to Lem. That explains that smile that he has. Now Lem ran the distillery till the 40s. Now during Prohibition, he had to shut the distillery down. So, went down to the town square, opened up the general store and hardware. Traded in mules and sold corn seed to get him through Prohibition. Now when Prohibition ended, the state of Tennessee remained dry. Couldn't make whiskey here. Lem had all he could take. He goes up to Nashville, convinces them in Nashville, you're not going to let us make or drink whiskey in Tennessee, let us make whiskey in Tennessee for tax revenue. He got the laws changed, came back here to Lynchburg, got the distillery back up and running. Now when he died, he left the distillery to his 4 sons. They took over. Now these guys here are all pretty smart guys, Vanderbilt graduates. First thing they did when they took over the distillery, they wanted to increase our production and output. They wanted to go into worldwide distribution. They ended up, they didn't have enough money to do it on their own. So they put Jack up for sale. They're smart guys. They put a clause in the bottom of the contract. Can't change our location, can't change our people. 1956 rolls around, a little company out of Louisville, Kentucky by the name of Brown-Forman walked in. Offered them a little less money, but said, guys, we don't have a problem with contract. Brown-Forman is still our parent company today. Great company to work with, but they know where we're at and let's holler. We are their #1 best-selling label of whiskey that they own, along with the #1 best-selling whiskey in the world. We're currently in 174 countries. Now Jack's last couple years of life weren't very good. He was in a lot of pain by this point. Now Jack was always the last man into this office. Lem would be here as the sun come up. He'd get things going at the distillery. He'd open up Jack's safe, put his paperwork on his desk. Now Jack had 2 bars down on the square, the Red Dog and the White Rabbit. So he had to shut those bars down at night. So he wouldn't get into work till about noon each day. One morning, Jack came in early. He beat everybody into the office. He knelt down in front of that safe with his lantern, running through the numbers, trying to get a document out of there. Couldn't remember his combination. He got mad, kicks the safe, broke his toe. Now instead of going to the doctor, he hobbled around on that foot. By the time he went into the doctor, gangrene set in. Medicine not being what it is today, they amputated Jack's foot. That poison continued to spread up Jack's leg. They amputated below the knee. When Jack was 61 years old trying to save his life, they amputated what was left of his left leg. Jack died of blood poisoning and complications from kicking a safe. Now a lot of us feel that if Jack would have just soaked his foot in some whiskey, he probably would have solved that problem. But when he died, he left us a moral that we live by every day. Don't come to work early. Come with me, folks. Now get your notebooks out. I'm going to tell you how to make a little Jack. I'm going to start with those 3 grains, the corn, the barley malt, and the rye. We're going to grind that up into a cornmeal mix. We're going to add some cave spring water to it. We're going to cook that low and slow for about 45 minutes. At that point, we're going to add our own proprietary yeast, a little bit of setback from the mash before. We're making a sour mash, the same as my grandmother made sourdough bread. Now that's going to sit in fermentation for right around 4 days. Day 1, it's going to look like a rapid boil. It's never going to get over 85 degrees. 90 degrees, it'll kill the yeast. Got to have that yeast to make alcohol. What you're actually seeing is the yeast eating the sugars in the mash. It's going to release CO2. Now by day 4, all those sugars are going to be gone. At that point, we're going to pump the mash to that tall building. Now, we have 4 100% copper, 40-foot tall, continuous flow colander stills. So the mash is going to come in from the top. The colanders on the inside of the still will slow the fall of the mash. We hit it with steam from the bottom. Alcohol turns to a vapor, goes to the top. Trap that alcohol vapor, run it through a condenser and a worm. It's going to come off the still at 140 proof moonshine, White Lightning, Red Dog, Mountain Dew, whatever you want to call it. How about bourbon? When our whiskey first comes off the still, we meet all the criteria to be a bourbon. We're gonna go straight into an unused American white oak barrel to the barrel houses. In 4 years, we'd be a prime bourbon. But we're not making bourbon here, we're making Tennessee whiskey. So all of our whiskey is gonna go through that sugar maple charcoal. As it's going through the charcoal, we're changing the characteristics of the whiskey. When it comes out the bottom, we're now a Tennessee whiskey from that point on. Now we got 4 stills, 2 large stills, 2 small stills. Those small stills are going to produce right around 13 to 15 gallons of whiskey a minute apiece. Those large stills in the middle are going to produce right around 40 gallons of whiskey a minute apiece. We're not going to run all 4 stills at the same time. Copper's a soft metal. We don't want to burn up our stills. We'll rotate amongst those stills all week long. Every Tuesday we bring our stills down to clean them. They fire them right back up. These stills are going to run pretty much 24 hours a day, 49 to 50 weeks out of the year. We'll shut down for 2 to 3 weeks to do all of our major maintenance and repairs every year. Now we're going to go into the still house now. Once we go through that door, sorry, but you're not going to be able to use your cameras or cell phones. Come with me.
Well, this concludes our tour of the Jack Daniel's Distillery. Sorry we couldn't take you into some of the places, but you'll just have to make plans to come here sometime. Come to Lynchburg, Tennessee to visit the Jack Daniel's Distillery.
I look out across the water, I smell the salt and feel the breeze. But in my heart I hear the calling of my old home, Tennessee.
Well, that was a lot of interesting facts. So like I said earlier in the video, do make plans to go take your own personal tour, because you'll be able to go inside the buildings that we were not allowed to photograph. We want to thank all of you that are following us on our journey as Ricky and I are soaring together.